Do you still find writing YouTube scripts overwhelming, despite having made a ton of videos? Because even after being paid to write more than 40 million views worth of content, well, I used to feel exactly the same. It didn't matter how many reps I put in, how many scripts I wrote, and how well they performed, sitting in front of that blank screen always felt just as stressful. But since changing how I formatted my scripts from this to this, it allows me to write scripts like this one that you're listening to right now in less than an hour. So let me show you exactly why this format will change your life as a YouTuber and how to start using it on your very next script. So here's how I format my scripts. And let's start with the reason that formatting them like this is not just something that looks cool, but is actually going to result in a better video. So one of the biggest problems writing scripts is that the page becomes quickly very overwhelming, right? You've got basically an endless stream of text, comments plastered everywhere, and no ability to actually see at a glance the structure that is underlying the chaos. And that's where the obvious comes in, right? This way of presenting a script is just neater. It's easier to keep track of your segments, to remember where you wrote what, and just to get an overall sense of the script's structure. But that's not the biggest value add because we've also got these boxes on the right. These are where you can write notes and B-roll suggestions for the editor, and especially if you break your script up line by line, it allows you to be hyper specific with where your editing suggestion applies rather than having to write endlessly convoluted comments. So that's the first thing. The result of formatting your script like this is not only that it's easier for you to read, but it allows you to communicate more effectively with your editor, which essentially future-proofs your production system if you ever decide to scale up. But the real power of this type of scripting is that it allows you to bake in retention optimized principles from the start. So let's walk through exactly how that looks, starting with the main structural bedrock of any video. Now, when scripting any video, including the one you're watching right now, we want to make sure that the viewer has something exciting to look forward to at least every 2 minutes. So my first job as a writer is making sure that these payoffs have been added to my script. Now, if you're using a Google Doc or a regular Notion page, you of course can just list your payoffs. However, when you throw these into a table format with the payoff points marked down the side, you already start to feel the overall video structure building up. It sounds silly, but that feeling of momentum of always having that underlying system guiding you makes it way easier to keep going. So that's the first retention optimizer to throw into your grid structure, payoffs. So now we have those in place, we can use our table format structure to incorporate the next most retention optimizing element. Now, payoffs are all well and good, but if the audience doesn't know they're coming or why they should be excited, they'll still leave, which is why the next thing we're going to throw into our table script is setups. These are the moments where we indicate to the audience what the payoff is that they have to look forward to next. But I want you to look at how different it feels to do this in a normally formatted script. Again, there's no reason why you can't do it like this, but now we're seeing all of our setups and payoffs squashed together. So we've effectively got a bunch of meaningless bullet points and we stop being able to see the purpose of each line at a glance. Whereas when we throw these very same lines into our table format script, now it's very clear that this is segment 1, this is segment 2, and I can see at a glance how each segment begins and ends. So that's the second retention optimizer to throw into your grid structure, setups. At this point, we've already baked in 2 of the most important retention principles without getting stressed out or losing track of the flow. But the question now is, how do we actually turn that into a ready to record script? Well, at this point, I want you to think of your setups and your payoffs like guardrails. And the only job you have now is to get from A to B in an interesting way, which is what I call adding tension. Now, this is truly where a script formatted in the normal way starts to become completely overwhelming. Because as your script gets longer and longer, suddenly you've got a wall of text to sift through, and it gets more difficult to find that one line that you wrote somewhere, or to remember which parts need more attention than others. But a table format script flips that on its head. Because not only do you now keep that overarching sense of structure as you start to write, but it allows you to skip around a bit more. For example, you know that feeling where you just can't crack a particular topic and you feel like it'll be easier to go and work on a different part of the script for a while. With a table format script, it's way easier to spot those gaps and to know just at a glance what you still need to come back to. But there's still one last thing we need to throw in to maximize this video's potential. And our table format is going to allow us to do this with pinpoint accuracy. So I used to spend a lot of annoying time working on client scripts, trying to find the perfect spot to place a call to action. It was a lot of scrolling up and down the document and trying it in different places and just seeing where it sounded good. But the one thing I've learned is that there are a couple of simple rules to follow when deciding where to put your call to action. Now, ignoring your end screen call to action, of course, which goes at the end, your product placement or lead magnet type CTAs need to go in a particular place in your script. You don't really want to put them in segment 1 because you haven't delivered enough value yet to convince someone to click. So you want to aim somewhere in segments 2 or 3. This is early enough that you've still got the majority of your viewers, but not so early that you haven't yet built up the goodwill required to earn that click. But you don't want to throw it in completely at random. You want to put it straight after a setup. This is because you've just opened another curiosity gap for your viewer, and so they're more likely to stick around through the plug because they want that curiosity resolved. And here's where the table format was so effective when literally writing this very script. Because on my first pass, when I was writing this, I threw the call to action into segment 2, which was fine, but only later spotted that I put it after a payoff, not after a setup. Now, with a normally formatted script, I wouldn't have spotted this anywhere near as easily and might have gotten to filming day right now with the call to action in a non-optimized position. But because I had my clear table format structure, I noticed this mistake the very next time I scrolled up through the script, which meant I was able to adjust where it was positioned in the structure straight away. Now, the reason I skipped over talking in depth about your end screen call to action is because there's actually a surprising amount to say. In fact, it's probably one of the most important parts of your entire script. So watch this video next where I'll show you the exact formula I've used to 5x end screen click-through rates across multiple channels and why this is such a game changer for your channel's growth.